Hello, everybody. Well, today we're going to take a look at nationalism for a few minutes here. So, we're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of nationalism as it relates to the time period that we're studying, and also just more or less for everyone, even still today. So, first, let's start with nationalism. Now, we've been looking at this term for the last little while, and you should see that nationalism is an extreme love for one's country and the things that make up your country. So, all of those things that make up the group of people that you're with, the place that you live, the culture you belong to, or the national identity that you believe you have. Now, there are lots of good things about nationalism. For instance, nationalism can act as a unifying component for people. It can unify a group of people behind a cause, behind an idea. And this has been a very powerful thing, especially when you think about power and how when you get more and more people involved, or when the number is high, you can have power. Also, it instills a sense of pride. So, nationalism is when people kind of share a culture or an ethnic identity, and they can feel good about the things that they do, and they want to share that with other people. Now, this is a very galvanizing concept, and it really helps to make people feel part of a group and to feel like they belong and like their voice matters. This is a really important thing because it allows people to be brought together. Maybe people who felt that they've been disenfranchised. That means they haven't been part of the group, they haven't been part of the people that get to make the decisions, and they get to feel that with nationalism. And of course, nationalism works for nation building. So, what we see is that nations like Italy, Germany, and some others that we're going to be studying in a little bit more detail this week, they get to kind of feel part of a group and feel special. This is also something that happened in places like Canada, even the United States, and many of the countries in Central and South America over the past couple hundred years, when those nations broke away from their larger colonies like Britain or France, or one of the other big ones from Europe, like Spain or Portugal. And this kind of sense of identity can really help you to galvanize and build your own country. We also see nationalism as something that has helped to spur on democracy or the rise of democracy with people. And this cannot be understated and not, or overstated. I mean, democracy is built on this concept of people working together to build their government. Now, we also have the idea of extending freedoms. With nationalism and with unifying groups of people, we give freedoms to people who didn't have them before. And this, again, as I've said a couple times, is a great galvanizing concept for people around the world, especially people of cultural or ethnic groups that are kind of the same. They sense that they can be heard and feel free. This usually coincides with the development of law and with having monarchies fade a little bit. So you get all those things kind of pushed together. And one of the factors that brings all these things together is, of course, trade. Now, when we have universal trade, we really can see that people will want to have objects and items and goods and services that other people have, and they will trade for them back and forth. This leads to economic prosperity and actually leads to a rise in all kinds of things, an increase in the number of people in what we call the middle class, and an increase in competition that causes people to look for scientific enrichments in their lives. The arts are enriched, and of course, economics is enriched for a lot of people as well. But nationalism also has a not so good side. Sometimes nationalism can actually pit people against each other. So, for instance, if you live in a country and you are of the ethnic group or the cultural group that is the majority, you might actually feel not part of the group if you are not part of that if you are a minority and not part of the majority group. So this can kind of sometimes nationalism can kind of splinter the way that a group sees themselves, because it can make a group kind of be like, we're better than you. We are the ones who are leading things. We have this kind of a culture. We believe in this religious belief. We have these kind of ideals when it comes to economics, and you don't. You should have those to be like us. So this kind of can tear apart empires, because one of the things that happens in nation building is you feel a part of an identity for yourself that is against the other group or against the other side. This can sometimes lead to authoritarian government, not always democracy, because sometimes what can happen with nationalism is you feel so euphoric or happy about what you're doing, and frequently that is led by a leader, one person, maybe a small group, an oligarchy, but frequently it's one person who is able to bring everyone together on that one side of the fence, or that one group, or that one cultural, ethnic, or ideological group, and they can bring them all together. This also can lead to a clear division between the haves and the have-nots within a society. The people who are with the leader, the people who have the ideas, the concepts, or the way of living that is positive and is the one that they are being pushed upon, they feel it. So we sometimes get this idea of what's right and what's wrong with nationalism. And if you're not with us, you are against us. What's wrong with you because you don't believe what we believe? We believe what is right. And those two words can be very dangerous and have historically been very dangerous. I mean, even if we look at the COVID situation right now, the idea of who's right, who's wrong within this is starting to take hold. We're a few months into this now, just about half a year, and people are starting to pick sides and to galvanize or to group up on those sides about the right way or the wrong way to do things with it. Now, of course, nationalism can also breed ugly. What do I mean by that? A class struggle. What you can have in nationalism when it goes kind of too far is you can have the group that thinks they're right, and sometimes, frequently, this is both sides, kind of start to put in place ideas that are against the other group. Frequently, this is on race. So racism has been a very ugly part of nationalism over the centuries. If we take a look at Nazi Germany, or if we take a look at even places like what happened in Cambodia with the Khmer Rouge, or in the Sudan about 10, 15 years ago, we start to see that these authoritarian rulers can sometimes lead to ethnic cleansing within a society. And that can be really bad. Another thing of nationalism is when people are so for something, they can be against what they don't like. And frequently this leads to war, competition for living space, competition for goods and services, competition for resources. As you guys know, that's a part of power, and it plays into nationalism. And this cannot be understated. Nationalism can be a great galvanizing force, but it can also be an authoritarian force that just kind of breeds distrust and hate for anybody who is not like you. And even though nationalism can take apart empires, it can also build new ones, and it does. Because with nationalism, you feel that you are so awesome in the way that you believe, what you do economically, culturally, scientifically, that you think you are almost infallible. And you want to share that with everyone else through empire building, through taking over other groups of people. In the world today, we see this in lots of different ways. We see it with companies who basically take over smaller companies or their competition and basically beat them into the ground. If you've been watching the news right now, you might notice and see that there's a lot about Amazon with what they've been able to kind of create, and that not everybody likes that they have gotten so big. This is a natural part of nationalism. Groups kind of compete with each other, empires are built, and of course, empires sometimes also get unbuilt through nationalism. Now, a big way that this can happen is nationalistic leaders tend to only want their points or their point of view expressed. This results in censorship. Now, I don't know if you've been seeing things lately about censorship, here even on YouTube, where sometimes some people are saying, well, you aren't showing my videos, you are censoring my point of view. And it's a fine line between where you get to censor somebody's point of view and you just kind of need to take a look at the general well-being of most people. And that's really, it's been a balancing act forever. I don't know when that's ever going to go away. And there's a little bit of an introduction on nationalism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a galvanizing force, but when it goes too far, it can also take away.